today's topic is going to be about schema theory. Yeah. So before we start, I would like to ask you a question. My question is about how do you tend to remember things? How do you usually remember things? Recalling them, like repeating them, you mean? Making associations?
Yeah, associating it with the old things.
Yeah. Can you give an example of that?
Well, if we are reading a new article about football,
yeah.
So we know about the background, so...
yeah, that's good. Yeah, some people take notes as well. I will give you a specific situation. If you are introduced to someone before going into your class, like in 1 or 2 minutes, and then the person introduced you to another one, and then you went to your class. After your class, do you think you'll be able to remember this person's name? I think it's difficult. Yeah. Unless you take notes of the name, or this person was a really important person and you kept repeating the name for a while so that you can remember it later. The way that we are going to deal with here in the schema theory is that connecting this new knowledge, this information that you have just received with the information that you already have. Like for example, if this person is named Khalid, so you just think about Khalid, yeah, I think I know someone who's someone with that name. Like for example, this is my cousin's name, or this is my neighbor's name. So after the class, if you're asking about this person's name, you will immediately remember your friend or your neighbor with the same name. So there's a video that we are going to watch at the beginning. It's a reading passage, but it's not reading. We will listen to the passage, they are going to read it. And then let's see how will you be able to understand this passage.
Most of the factors that predict whether or not something that is being perceived will also be remembered operate in the first few seconds of learning. One of these factors involves something termed a schema, and whether or not the new learning bumps into one. Let me show you an example of a schema by having Dr. Whitehead and myself read a paragraph to you, one actually taken from a famous research paper. Your job is to remember as many facts about the paragraph as you can. Let me tell you in advance that you are going to fail miserably at this task unless I do something first. I can instantly improve your memory score from between 50 to 100% simply by adding 7 little words before you hear Dr. Whitehead and myself. But I'm not going to do that. You will hear the paragraph first, then I will read you the words.
The procedure is actually quite simple. First, you arrange things into different groups. Of course, one pile may be sufficient depending on how much there is to do.
If you have to go somewhere else due to lack of facilities, that is the next step. Otherwise, you are pretty well set. It is important not to overdo things. That is, it is better to do too few things at once than too many.
In the short term, this might not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well.
After the procedure is completed, one arranges the materials into different groups again. Then they can be put into their appropriate places.
Eventually, they'll be used once more, and the whole cycle will have to be repeated. However, that is a part of life.
Did you get all that?
Nothing else about what's the reading passage about. They are talking about something, and what is it?
Well, about schema, about something, you know.
No, they are reading a text about something. But what is that thing? What are they talking about?
Is it about presentation? How to read things?
How to read things? No.
How to get a place or something. Yeah. Procedure.
No. So now we just read or listened to a topic without even understanding what is this topic about. We didn't get a picture, no clue about this topic. No heading, nothing. Listen, what's the topic about?
Let us give you now the 7 magic little words. This paragraph is all about washing clothes. What this sentence provides for you is a mental framework, a way of organizing thoughts around some aspect of the world. We call such frameworks schemas, and you have them about people, situations, objects. This means something profound. Prior knowledge can disturbingly shape how you memorize and retain for long-term storage future knowledge. If a schema is triggered near the moment of learning, that learning is more permanent.
Break the rules!
So this is the idea. before we read the text, before we read the passage, we need to have prior knowledge. We need to have to connect this knowledge, the new information that you're going to get, with the information that you already have. If this connection doesn't happen, it will be difficult to understand this passage. Another reading passage here. Yeah, I'm going to read the passage for you if it's not so clear. The passage says, if the balloons booked, the sound wouldn't be able to carry since everything would be too far away from the correct floor. A closed window would also prevent the sound from carrying. Since most buildings tend to be well insulated, since the whole operation depends on a steady flow of electricity, a break in the middle of the wire would also cause problems. Of course, the fellow could shout, but the human voice isn't loud enough to carry that far. An additional problem is that string could break on the instrument. Then there would be no accompaniment to the message. It's clear that the best situation would involve less distance. Then there would be fewer potential problems. With face-to-face contact, the least number of things could go wrong. What is the passage about?
Barriers to
Sounds and insulation of sound.
Sound and the insulation of sound.
We're talking about problems.
It's about problems.
Problems in the topic from getting a message.
From getting a message. You are getting close.
Obstacles of memorizing.
The obstacles of memorizing things.
Or getting things.
Getting things. Okay. So let's have a look at this photo, this picture, and then try to read the passage again and see if you will be able to understand it or not. So think of this. Does it make sense? Of course not. What is the message of the writer? It's difficult to understand. So the passage is using a schema that most people haven't experienced or wouldn't have imagined. So we are talking here about something that you can't even connect this information with the prior information that you already have. So there is almost nothing stored in your memory that you can use to interact with the information in this passage. So, but if you're given a schema for this passage, it will be much easier to understand it and to remember it as well. Let's have a look at this. Take a moment and study this picture.
Someone is playing the guitar.
He's playing, someone's playing the guitar.
Owen is watching the balloons.
And the speaker is up there.
Yeah, the speaker is so high to reach the floor.
It's trying to make the sound loud enough.
Yeah.
So all the people can hear it, right?
All the people, it's not for everybody, it's for a specific person.
He wants to compare messages, sound to the
Yes, that's exactly what he wants. He wants to give a message to the person here, and he's trying to discuss the problems that he faces trying to put the speaker high or to read to make the message clear. And of course, it's accompanied with the music. So, if we read the passage again, does it make sense this time?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So if the balloon spot, the sound wouldn't be able to carry since everything would be too far away from the correct floor. A closed window would also prevent the sound from carrying since most buildings tend to be well insulated. Since the whole operation depends on the steady flow of electricity, a break in the middle of the wire would also cause problems. Of course, the fellow could shout, but the human voice is not loud enough to carry that far. An additional problem is that a string could break on the instrument. Then there could be no accompaniment to the message. It's clear that the best situation would involve less distance. Then there would be fewer potential problems with face-to-face contact. The least number of things could go wrong. So without getting the picture, without connecting this information with information that you already have, it's really difficult to understand the message of text. So now let's go into the theory. What is schema? Well, the schema, or the idea of the schema, was first introduced in 1932 by the British psychologist Frederick Berkeley. Frederick Berkeley was a psychologist, and he was trying to study how do people store information in their memory. Okay, he was trying to make interviews with non-native people, non-native speakers who traveled to the UK, and he talked to them about their prior knowledge and tried to connect this knowledge that they had in their own countries with the knowledge that they get in the UK. And he came with the idea of schema. The definition of a schema, it is defined as an abstract knowledge structure that represents the relationships among its component parts. So there are parts of the knowledge that we already have. There are so many parts. Everything we see, everything we learn, every person we meet, every video we watch, all this information is stored in our memory, and this information is connected, okay, in one way or another. It's based on the belief that every act of comprehension involves knowledge, one's knowledge of the word as well. So before you learn something, you must have something before, and you need to connect this information together to be able to understand the new information or knowledge. It describes the process by which readers combine their own background knowledge with the information in the text to be able to comprehend and to understand this text. There are two main types of schema. It is divided into two main types. The first one is content schema, which is the schema of the word. What do you know about the word? Everything you've learned, every experience you've come through during your life. And the other kind of schema is the formal schema, and this is much related to rhetorical knowledge or rhetorical structure. This is your ability to speak, to express yourself. Sometimes you have the knowledge, but you don't know how to express it. You don't have the right vocabulary. You don't have the right structure to be able to express your opinion. How does the process of a schema happen in human brain? The first phase is accretion. Accretion is the receiving, the absorbing of the new knowledge that you are getting for the first time. First, when you get this knowledge, it's not connected to the information, to the knowledge, your real knowledge that you have. And then we start the process of tuning, trying to change what you have, the information that you have, to match the new information. And then restructuring, forming a new schema. I'm going to give you an example of this. Let's think of a child who sees a bird for the first time. And then the child asks his father, what is this? The father would say, it's a bird. So the schema, the frame that goes into the child's mind is that a bird is something with wings and that can fly. 1 or 2 days later, the child is watching a video on television or something, and then he saw a picture of the penguin. Then he asked his father, what is this? The father said, it's a bird. This information doesn't go with the information, this schema, this knowledge, doesn't go with the knowledge that the child has. Because what he knows that the bird can fly, but this bird cannot fly. So what happens? He starts to tune, he starts to change the information, the knowledge that he has to fit in the new context or the new knowledge. And then finally, he makes a new frame that a bird is something, or some birds can fly and others cannot fly. Okay? So this is the new schema, or the restructuring that happens at the end. How can we relate this to the context? I'm going to ask you this question. How can we relate this knowledge to the context, to the teaching? Yes?
Before teaching something new, we try to make a link between what we're teaching and what the students already know.
Very good.
Excuse me, if we are, for example, talking about the center of the earth, which is slowly going on, unless we get the right knowledge they have and words they have in minds about earth or about words they remember and put them on the board and then discuss and then introduce the story, they won't get their application mentioned.
Yeah, that's good.
Relevant to outsider. It's not just that. We need to know what they really know, so we
Yes.
can build that will later.
Yeah, that's also a very important point.
So for this point, we can start by testing, and then teaching, and then testing again. So
Testing what? What do you mean by testing?
What do we know? What do students know?
Yes, the rare knowledge. Yes, yeah. You need first to ask the students about what they know about this topic. Okay? You need to test the prior knowledge that they already have about this topic before you introduce the topic. Do you find
But here,
reading?
excuse me, it's not only what they know, concerning the language in particular, it's not what you know about the language, but how you really use it, in what way you can use it, because it's not enough to know the grammar rules, as we always do in many,
It has nothing to do with grammar, actually.
No, I mean, I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
So if I want, it's not enough to know the language or learn about it, what matters is that how I use it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So using the knowledge that you already have. Okay. Do you think that teaching reading, is as exciting or as interesting to your students as other lessons, like speaking or grammar, or it's less interesting?
It depends on how you introduce it.
So it depends on you, on the teacher.
Yes, maybe there's a better rule.
It depends on the topic. Sometimes we talk about food, so this is something related to them. So they talk about food and they say that we're hungry and want to eat, we want to capsa now, I'm going to bake. Some other times it's about something we can't relate to.
So it's related to the topic. Yes.
I think it depends upon the level you are teaching, because the audience is very important. If they understand the content and the content of the reading material, it would be easier for them, rather, for example, teaching level 1 reading and teaching reading to level 4. They're two different ballgames.
I'll tell you about an experience that I had last year. One of the teachers who was being observed, okay, during the formal observation, the observer came to his class. It was a reading class. He didn't really like the observer. The teacher, of course, was not happy with the evaluation at the end. And he told me that the observer underestimated me. I said, why? He said, it was a reading day, and you remember last year we had the hourly pacing guide. So he said, at that time I had to do reading, and I don't think that reading would be interesting. And what did I do? I just gave the topic to the students, let them read, and then there were, of course, some rereading questions. He did the rereading questions, asked the students to read, and you know what happens when our students, when you ask them to read, they just find a chance to look at their mobile phones, to check their email, or to do something.
I guess this is like the problem here. We don't ask someone to read for the purpose of reading. You need to get some information. But that's what we keep calling skimming, scanning.
He did that.
Critical thinking. So you read for a purpose. And before you read, you've got to introduce the vocabulary, the framework of the reading, the title, explain what you want to say before you let them do this.
Yeah, he did these two techniques, skimming and scanning, and he asked the students to read the passage at the beginning, answer these questions, and then read again the whole passage and answer these specific detailed questions. So, but still, at the end, the lesson was boring for him himself, for the students, and for the observer as well. The problem here is that he didn't activate students' schema. He didn't give enough presentation at the beginning. He didn't let students ready for reading the passage. Okay, so while reading, comprehension of a message entails drawing information from both the message and the internal schema until sets are reconciled as a single schema or a message. Like, for example, if you are introducing a reading passage about Queen Elizabeth, so what comes to our students' mind? If you are going to introduce a topic, do our students know a lot about her? They don't. They might recognize the picture or something like this, but if you ask about her life, her personal life, her achievements, they will give no answer to this. Okay? So, the best thing is to relate this to the king. Then ask them about their king. How old is he? How many children? How many children does he have? What kind of achievements he made to the country? So they will start recalling the information that they already have and try to connect this information to the knowledge that they are going to read about. Well, how can we use it in teaching? Use of visual aids. There are so many ways that we can visual aids that we can use at the beginning of the reading passage that can help our students recall their prior knowledge. For example, like photos, graphs, charts, illustrations, videos. All these can lead to the topic before reading it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That's a very good idea, but does it mean that if I'm not to introduce anything new to the students, it means?
No, we can. I will tell you later. This is related to the limitations of the theory. Use of metacognitive strategies, like this, discussing the title of the topic. Just ask the students to look at the title, look at the pictures connected to the topic. What can you see in the picture? What is this title about? Okay, read the first paragraph, and then we can discuss it together with your students. Problem-solving strategies, like raising a question. What do you know about Queen Elizabeth, for example? Of course, as we said, that not all students will be able to answer, but even though, let them guess. Divide students into groups. Let them guess, what is this topic about? What do you expect to read about? Let them get even wrong answers. That's not the problem. They are later going to see what is the right answer and compare it to the answer that they gave before. Yeah.
Is there a problem between the topic known and the language unknown? How can we behave?
The language that they know, you mean?
No. They know the topic,
yes,
but the language to use is not there.
They lack the language.
The language. Yes.
While presenting the vocabulary answer.
Okay. Can I answer?
I'll give an example. Like, it depends on the level of the students, yes. So if you're talking about London and you're talking about the weather, don't say like, what about the weather in London? Like, this is for a student or just starting, it's very difficult. But you can say, is it cold or hot in London? So is it cold or hot in London? So
simplify
things. So he will speak like it's cold.
Regarding this point, the student's ability to speak, our students have very limited, or I can't say all of them, but many of them, yes, or most of them, have very limited ability of knowledge of vocabulary, structure. But what we need to do is that to let them speak, even if they are if they make mistakes. That doesn't matter. Just let them break the ice between the language and their ability to produce a sentence or structure. So just let them speak. It doesn't matter how many mistakes they make. Let them.
It will cause a lot of frustration with students if the topic is above their level, and you force them to speak, or so it will frustrate them.
If they can't individually speak, try to divide them into groups. So in a group, they will collect ideas. They will help each other and generate ideas, and then let each one of them give part of what they are going to say.
Right.
So other students will help.
But I want to say concerning this question that you can do that at the very beginning of the class when you introduce the vocab. So you can provide the vocab they are going to use later. So
yeah, that's another example.
Facilitate their task.
But before, we're not talking about the vocabulary that you're going to see in the passage. We are going to look at the knowledge that they have before reading the passage. Expressing their own information, their own knowledge before reading the passage.
If they don't have anything.
That's what we are talking about. Even if they don't know, we have to connect this to some kind of knowledge somehow related to the topic.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be the same.
In this case, you can just change the context to Jeddah. Say, what's the weather like in Jeddah here? So.
No, I said it's somehow connected, but not a completely different topic.
No, you're talking about weather. I mean, the example you gave just was...
Yeah.
I'll take the same example.
Yes, you can talk about the weather in Jeddah, for example. Yeah, that's true.
Excuse me, in this section I got a suggestion. We know pretty well which word is used in the text. So you take maybe 4 pages or 5 pages on a particular day.
Yeah.
When we get the schema from them, we write the words what they know. For example, vocabulary, we write all the words, the written words, we write them, we will not tell anything about the words in the text. Story.
Yes.
And when they read the story, they are going to apply the previous knowledge anyway. And that is, oh, this is that word, contextualizing. and they say this is how it goes. So again, it's a group work. They will come up with the equal words at the end of it.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what we are.
Yeah. That's a very good idea. Okay. So we have also some memory recalling strategies. This is asking students to talk, to tell stories, to tell us about their previous experiences. A movie that they watched, a trip that they have been to, a person that they talked to before, anything like this, any information that they already have related to this topic. Let them speak, even if they cannot produce complete, correct sentences. Correcting mental modes, our models. This is one of the difficult things, is that to introduce a topic that your students do not have enough knowledge about, or know nothing, or they know information that doesn't match the reading passage. They have the wrong knowledge of the topic. Okay, so what you need to do here, if you are introducing something that your students have no idea about, like for example, if you are explaining a topic about lottery, a reading passage about lottery, and our students have no idea what lottery is, it's not part of the context, it's not part of the culture. So it's difficult to explain something like this. What you need to do is to explain it, and that takes much more time and effort. Okay? It will be much easier if you can connect this to the knowledge that they have, but if it's completely new topic, that will take much time.
I think you can overcome the problem by asking them in advance to find something about this. So we're going
to maybe that's
next
one
week
session before or one day before.
You can say next week we're going to discuss lottery. So try to
building the scheme.
Yes, this is building.
Don't you think that this will increase the TT? Teacher topic time.
You have to at this part, because the students have no idea about it. You need to introduce the topic. You need to give them idea what is lottery.
But I gave you an answer right now. I told you, ask them beforehand to find it out.
Show the video about it, for example, before.
Yes, you can show a video or a picture.
Even still, we can relate it to Dr. Shawky. We can relate it to a similar thing here, like hyperpandas that we draw.
Yes, for example, things like this. Yes. Do we all have the same background information? Of course not, because we are all from different parts of the world. We have different culture. Even people from the same city, from the same country, have different culture. Like people from big cities, people from urban areas. Our information is culture specific. The major problem in schema is the difference between the writer intention and the reader comprehension. So the writer wants to say something, and the reader is trying to understand it, but he understands it in a different way. Which is most obvious where readers have different life experiences to the writer's models. So I have a knowledge, and they have a knowledge. Like for example, if you are talking to students about, for example, university life in the West, our students don't have the knowledge about this, or they think about the university life that they have here, only mails. You just go to the class, and once you finish, you go home. This is university life for them. They hardly ever ask them to write research and things like this, which is different from the what happens in the West. Readers sometimes also feel that they comprehend the text, but have different interpretation to the author. Let's have a look at this example. The photo of a full moon in the Western culture indicates scary scenes, but in the East it means love and beauty. Let's have a look at this picture. If you see this picture in one of the movies, for us, for the Arabs, or for the people from the East, they just look at the moon. The moon represents beauty, and the night represents quiet and peace. But for people in the West, no, this photo means something scary, something terrible is going to happen. Yes, yeah, things like this. So, the writer wants to say something, but the reader understands it in a different way. That's because of the knowledge that they already have about this. Limitations to the theory. As Carroll and Easterhold point out, one of the most obvious reasons why a particular content schema may fail to exist for a reader is that it's not part of the reader's cultural background. So you introduce something that's not part of the student's culture, which is difficult for him to understand, like the idea of lottery, as you said. Yeah, that's it, that's it here. Some concepts like the word lottery, for example, is not part of the Arab culture. Other words like hiking. When I was explaining hiking to my students, it was difficult for them to understand hiking. What is hiking? I had to show pictures and videos to explain that this is hiking. People have to wear backpacks and hiking boots, and they go walking for some time. You have to introduce the topic first because it's new for them. And you can also relate this to camping that they sometimes do in the desert here. One of the problems is insufficient background knowledge. The solution is that teachers need to read within the students' area of knowledge. You need to know what our students know. What do they know about this topic before you introduce the topic? So that will make it easy for you. You can easily recall the schema that they have about this topic. But if you have no idea what are they talking about, or what they already know about this topic, it will be difficult for you to introduce the topic. Provide local texts, or texts which are developed from their own culture, from writers from the same culture. That will make it easy for the students. Try to find texts, books, stories that were introduced by Arab or Saudi writers, and ask students to read it before. Maybe journals or magazines or news articles, something like this. Appropriate reading activities. Yeah, that can also help, like showing pictures, videos, discussions, raising questions. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some of the topics that our students gone through or studied in the second year of high school and the last year of high school, the last 2 years. Almost all the topics, I scanned them, and here they are. I want you to have a look at these topics and tell me, what do you think of them? So the first, that's for the second year, about firefighters. The first reading passage in Unit 1, firefighters. And then another one about accidents in the home. This is the early spread of Islam. Early traders of the Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia's aim to produce enough food for itself. The holy month of Ramadan. Oh no, the Red Sea in danger. The story of oil. The modern Saudi postal service. Tea. Muslims in China. The progress of Arab medicine. Okay, these are almost all the topics they studied in the second year of high school. Now, in the third year, they read about water, conservation, and urgent needs, air travel in Saudi Arabia, the holy month of Ramadan, Earth planet, Arab aid, the universities in Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz bin Abdulrahman Al Saud, the founder of the kingdom, Saudi explorers in the Antarctic. Yeah, these were the topics, almost all the topics that our students read in high school in the last 2 years before they joined university. So, yeah, they are all, I scanned them from the English book.
Are you sure that they are studied this?
At least we can assume that they read about it.
I know about this, they don't study really.
The idea here is that they can, at least, they have some vocabulary related to these topics, so they can, in some way, express it. But what do you think of the topics themselves?
All local culture.
Yes, they are very culture specific. They are all about Saudi Arabia. So our students have hardly read in their English books any knowledge related to the culture of the language itself. It's all about Saudi Arabia. It's about oil. It's about the founder of the kingdom. It's all related to the knowledge or the culture where they live. There is almost nothing about the world outside. But that doesn't mean that they know nothing about the world outside. They still do. They watch it in movies and on the internet. But the problem is that they cannot express. They don't have enough vocabulary. These are the topics that they study, but they don't have the vocabulary to talk about the world outside. Okay?
It's not only the camp, by the way. You're talking about, the language competence in general. They lack all the language competence they need to express. So they are short of ideas, language, vocab, structures, everything.
I can't say everything.
No, this is the reality here. So speak of reality.
Do all our students have the same level?
The majority Algeria.
But we so many times have seen so many good students in our classes.
Very few.
I was lucky at this module to have two of my best classes, 104 and 103, and the students were really good. They were really able to understand what I say. They were interacting actively in the class. So I know I was lucky. At the beginning of the module, I had two repeaters classes that they were.
How do you read into
This is what I'm telling you about. Just let them speak with the least number of vocabulary they have. It doesn't matter how many mistakes they make. Let them speak. Let them say something. Encourage them to speak. One of the newly joined member of the ELI got this class, got my class. And he said that my students cannot understand anything. He is an American teacher, and he's talking all the time in English, and he doesn't know Arabic, and the students do not understand anything. Their level is very low, okay? And he had a big problem with these students. I told him, just, throw the ball to them. Let them speak. This is what I did. I tried to make my speech as simple as possible. And I tried to push them hard to make sentences. I sometimes give them time, like 5 minutes, to make one single sentence. So stay together or individually. Just work alone for 2, 3, 5 minutes. Make a sentence, one single sentence. It doesn't matter. You don't have to write it. Just think how are you going to connect words together and utter a sentence. Well, now in groups of 3, let's say, I'm going to show you some topics from the and I'd like to see how are you going to include or activate sequence schema. Just a second, please. This is the topic, the life of a hard-working future king. Okay. You need to prepare questions, pictures, videos. You can, of course, imagine these things because you don't have the facilities now to make these things. But just tell me what exactly are you going to do with the students to activate their schema? And what would you do if your students couldn't answer your question? Like if you ask them to talk about Prince Walid, for example, to relate this topic to something from their own culture, and they have no answer to this. What is the next question if they couldn't answer the first one? Okay? Yeah. You can go. Start.
How much time do we have?
3 minutes? 5. Let's see the ideas that you came up with. Yes, please. Please listen to the mic.
I think we need to start with the picture of the crown prince. Prince Sultan.
Prince Sultan?
Yeah, you show them a picture.
Prince Sultan?
Prince?
The crown prince.
Yeah.
Prince Sultan, the crown prince. Stick that picture on the board and let's have a discussion about expectations. Then we can start talking about a person.
Yeah, so you show a picture of Prince Sultan and then have a discussion with this.
Yeah, this is the future king. That means the crown prince.
Yes. Yes.
Prince Sultan somewhere related to the
Yes, Salman.
Okay. Yes.
Well, trying to create some kind of interest among the students through talking about celebrities, what they know about celebrities, the lifestyle of celebrities. Do they have the same life? For example, do they go really shopping really or do other things, or they have to appear in a certain way? Yeah.
Okay.
And different kinds of people that in different fields, like sports people, okay,
yes.
Actors, something like that.
So if they have no idea, if they don't have enough information about Prince Sultan, you can change the couple to a celebrities. Yes?
I was always told that the royal family is a very sensitive topic and not to discuss it in class.
They understood.
I was told by a senior coordinator when that topic comes up in class to just say he's a great man and let's go to the next topic.
What if we couldn't understand this question?
But you know, U.S. relations with Gulf, there are difference or
it's the same.
Yes, and I would do the same.
Okay. What else? Please.
Let's suppose that we have this text and we are going to teach it in class. First of all, we need to relate to what we saw in the picture, but to use, to activate the schema first of all, without using any other pictures or parallel pictures. We should try to use these pictures and try to elicit the words that are related, how much they know first, and then upon this we can.
Do you think they know something about?
This is what we said. We should try. If they know, it's okay. If they don't, no problem. We can give them. You can introduce the new words using pictures, or you can use bring in other pictures.
So you're going to use the same pictures as the text?
Yeah, first of all, normally what we should do, and try to see how much they know. And in this case, you can introduce, if you find out that they don't learn, their ideas or words are limited, You can introduce other ones using pictures or videos or whatever.
If, for example, they fail to relate the text from the pictures, we should discard the topic. We shouldn't teach it.
It's not related?
Exactly. I mean, if the students have no schema about it, we cannot arouse their schema from their own.
You can create the schema.
No, we can from their own run traditions, right? Then it means that the text is not for reading purposes. There should have been an easier and more culturally, affiliated text. So we should.
Oh, that means we are going to avoid all the topics in the book.
No,
we can just ask about their lead jobs, and what's good and bad about these jobs,
Yeah.
Like they lead job or not.
Talking about celebrities.
Yeah, that's one. For example,
we talked about those people who are very well known for them.
Yeah.
In different fields. They have
Messi, for example, Messi has a sport.
Messi, Jamal Hassan, for example.
I think it's always possible for the instructor to find a kind of part of the culture is working with to relate to the topic of the teaching, however difficult it is or far somehow. For example, you can hear shed light on the life of one of the princes and kings in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
It's very famous and everyone...
Excuse me, listen please.
And everyone knows about, for example, like Prince Walid bin Talal, and you can start talking about his life. Youth here, as you know, are very interested in the life of a young prince like Prince Walid bin Talal. And they follow the news, what he does, where he travels, and so on. So you can start shedding light on this and ask about his life, and ask about the expectations, because I'm quite sure that some parts will be shocking when you read about a hard-working or a tough life of a king or a prince. So you can start taking this kind of comparison, this kind of challenge, this kind of shock that will appear in order to make use of it in the class, in stemming conversation, and starting discussing ideas. So you can start talking about the life, how do you expect the life of the king is, or the prince is. Do you think that a king or a prince can have a tough life, can have a difficult life, and you start shedding light in comparisons, and this will help a lot.
So you just ask them to predict what the life will be.
And by the way, the theory is supported, highly supported, theoretically, that it's a big success in teaching reading, and I think myself that it's a great help in my classes myself.
Yeah.
And some other times, even when some people claim that some points may be not related easily or so, you will find a way out. If you are from this culture, at least if you are from our culture, if you read about our culture, you will find a way out. So even sometimes you may get things with its opposites. So for example, I'm telling you an experience. I was talking about Halloween.
Yeah.
So can you imagine talking about Halloween to someone who doesn't know anything about something?
He doesn't know what's happening.
But at the end of the day, you will find a way out. That you can even talk about opposites. You can even relate to the Islamic religion that they know very well, and we are every day told that we have only 2 feasts to eat and others are haram or illegal. You can start discussing, even starting from this part side. You can say that, do you think that what are other celebrations that we have? What are other Eids, but we don't call them Eids. You know, the Muslims have only 2 Eids. And you start talking about this, so always there's a way out.
Yeah, and I still believe that there is a way that we can introduce the topic without even relating to the prince or someone that is a taboo, for example, to talk about. It's always a good idea to ask them, what would you do if you were a prince? What your personal life would be like? What your working life would be like? So you can ask them to imagine what would they do if they were in this situation.
And I'm sorry, I want to just add that in case that this even doesn't work and you find out that the topic is too tough and hard, and you failed really doing all this, here the time comes for pictures and videos, and starting showing something like flashcards or so, that will extend the conversation and will take it into the point.
Okay, thank you. Another topic, I'm not going to do this because we don't have time. The other topic was about Agatha Christie and Ernest Hemingway. But because we're running out of time in the last few minutes, I'll just wrap this up. Schema is everything our students have experienced in their life, their knowledge and their culture. It's everything they have seen, heard, smelled, or tasted. Everything that they have gone through in their own life. A reading comprehension is the interaction of a new information with the old knowledge that they already have. We need to read about our students' culture. We need to understand how they think and relate this to their own learning. Finally, our students come to the class loaded with experiences and previous knowledge. What we need to do is to activate this knowledge and try to make use of it in our classes. Thank you.